I would like to call the meeting to order. Am I supposed to read this agenda statement? That's something new.
That's new.
Okay, I'm not going to read the agenda statement, but if anyone's interested, it's on the posted agenda. Mr. Castillo, can you do the roll call for us, please?
Robert Ackerman.
Here.
James Blythe. Tina Certain. Sophia Corrugetto.
Here.
Thomas Hawkins. Jason Hurst. Joshua Nay.
Here.
Stephanie Sutton.
Here. Can I get a motion to adopt the agenda for this evening?
Motion to adopt?
A second?
Second.
All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Then a motion to approve the minutes of the previous meeting, please.
That we approve the minutes from our previous meeting.
Can I make one suggestion? And actually, it has to do with your name, Sophia.
Yeah.
There's
Oh,
something in this new software that her name is misspelled, and I think we brought it up last month, and it didn't get addressed. So it's just the way she's like coded in this new agenda software. Can we try to address that? Okay, that would be the only change that I would suggest.
I second that.
Okay. Okay, and then another.
Chair, I need to go talk to the booth people for a second.
Okay. Do we need him here to vote on the agenda? Do we need a quorum?
We need a quorum.
Okay, so we'll take a brief pause.
Yeah, we were just talking about her name right before you said it.
Yeah. We mentioned it last time, but it's still there, so maybe we can try one more time.
Yeah.
I thought you made it change your name. It's like, all right, cool.
You can say
No more vowels.
Yeah.
Vowels are
Well, it's
out.
like one of those like website things where they take all the vowels out. We're like trying to be a tech company or something.
They put it back in Twitter back in the day, wasn't Twitter? So it didn't have any vowels, but now it does.
Good thing is that I am all congested. House renovation will destroy you.
I never want to do it again. I'm like waiting to buy a condo and just like. That's all I expect. Just like relax.
I wish it was sick. One day.
So crazy coming downtown and it's like already fested up.
Yeah.
Where's what did it be?
Yes.
I didn't realize it started so soon.
Sorry, my new hearing aids can hear the loop, but they didn't give me a button to turn them on with.
Oh, are you all set now?
So I'm gonna be the man in the glass booth tonight.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
All right, so we have a motion to adopt to approve the minutes with one change to correct Sophia's name. Do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Okay, so the first discussion item of the evening is board elections for chair and vice chair for the following year. So we'll open that up to discussion.
Well, I think you can't do it again.
No, I am
So-
luckily out of this seat for for a little while.
And Sophia's leaving. So
Oh, really? I
yeah.
didn't know that.
I'm sorry. We were discussing that
Okay.
before. So I think not me. I want Bob. Like
Okay.
I feel.
I second the nomination for Bob. Bob has been a great chair in the past, so.
Over and over and over
And it
again.
sounds like we don't have another option.
Right.
Unless
You don't want my
anyone-
option. No.
Okay, great. So I guess, do we want to vote on chair and then talk about vice chair next? Okay. So we have a nomination and a second of Bob to be chair of the plan board again. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Okay, great. It's unanimous.
Madam Chair,
Yes.
could you, the first and the second ones?
So Josh nominated him and I was the second. Okay, and then for vice chair, I guess we also don't have a lot of options. I was planning to nominate Sophia again, but you're leaving us.
I nominate Stephanie.
Okay,
I second.
okay. So all of those in favor, Bob just can't miss any meetings because poor Sophia got stuck in the hot seat when I got hurt this year. So all those in favor of me being vice chair for next year, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, great.
Well, that looked like a coach deal, didn't it?
Yeah.
We
It's
don't
like
have a lot of
back to the
options.
good
and
old
there's 4
days.
people.
Yeah,
I
not a
don't
lot
know.
of options. Josh, it could have been yours, but you kind of made it clear you didn't want it. So
No.
next time around, a year from now.
I have to feel comfortable. I feel like it's gonna be a couple years.
Okay, great. So that was fast and easy. Bob, do you want me to continue running this meeting?
I do, if you wouldn't mind.
Yes.
Because I'm in a kind of a weird echo chamber.
Yes.
I
Okay.
can hardly wait to hear you people talk.
Okay, Mr. Castillo, would you mind reading the first item into the record for us, please?
Not at all. Petition LD 22-69ZON, Alachua County applicant, Jim Muir Engineering LLC agent, request to rezone property from City of Gainesville Planned Development to City of Gainesville Downtown, located at 220 South Main Street.
Okay, before we jump into staff's presentation, this was the item we had a request from the affected party, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. Do you all have a preference? So we have procedures for like formal and informal hearings. Are you okay just kind of keeping things informal, or do you want to follow the timeframes for a formal hearing? Informal. Okay, perfect. We will be a little bit flexible. So we'll let staff present first, and then we'll bring you all up. Great, thank you. Mr. Simmons, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. Jason Simmons with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you involves the Alachua County Courts Complex, which is downtown. Just these pictures indicate at the top the main courthouse building. You got the public defender's office, and then a shot of the parking area on the roughly the corner of South Main Street and Southwest 4th Avenue. This area under consideration tonight is bounded by South Main Street on the east, over here, Southwest 2nd Avenue to the north, Southwest 2nd Street to the west, and Southwest 4th Avenue on the south. The area is roughly 6.5 acres in size, and currently it has urban core, City of Gainesville land use designation, and the current zoning is planned development, or PD. The ordinance 001607 was adopted in 2001, and it regulates the development of a consolidated Alachua County Courts Complex to include all the various functions of a courts complex, such as the criminal courts, civil courts, court services such as the public defender's office, the state attorney's office, the court reporter, et cetera, et cetera. So the proposal would be to change the zoning from the PD designation to the City of Gainesville Downtown, or DT zoning, which is one of the city's transit zones. And you see here on the map what that would look like if this goes through. Notice there's DT zoning on 3 sides of the properties, on the north, the east, and the west. To the south, across 4th Avenue, you have Urban 6 transect zoning. Again, you see the subject property highlighted in yellow. The rezoning criteria is outlined in section 30-3.14 of the Land Development Code. They're all discussed further in detail in the staff report. Staff feels that all these criteria have been met by the proposal, including also the criteria J, which is special for change to a transect zone. It's a logical extension of the zoning in the area. It's consistent with the overall vision of the city of Gainesville, so on and so forth. All of that is discussed in some detail in the staff report. Now, the unusual thing about this ordinance is that you're going from a PD to straight zoning, which is the DT zoning. The PD has conditions and recommendations that were adopted when the PD was adopted. The ordinance lists the additional conditions, restrictions, and regulations that apply to the development and use of the land. Staff looked at all of those and determined that most have been met, or there are things that are currently regulated by the Land Development Code. However, there are some conditions that cannot be met by a straight zoning process that does not have specific conditions beyond the existing regulations that are existing within that zoning designation. So I'd like to sort of point out some of these that are ongoing for your discussion and consideration. Because if this is adopted, these conditions would basically go away. So the first one here is the condition that future phase development plans require site plan approval from the plan board and the city commission. Obviously, if the DT zoning goes through, any new proposal would have to meet the current City of Gainesville development plan review processes. The second one here talks about setbacks along Southwest 2nd Street and 2nd Place. It limits the height along 2nd Street south of Southwest 2nd Place to 3 stories with a 40-foot maximum building height limitation that applies to all the buildings or structures located between 20 to 40 feet from the edge of pavement of Southwest 2nd Street and south of Southwest 2nd Place. Under the DT zoning, the height allowed throughout that zone is 12 stories by right and up to 14 stories in accordance with the development bonus system. Now, there are also some PD zoning standards listed in the plan development plan report for the PD that compared the PD zoning to the standards of the CCD zoning district, which was in place at that time. So they had a limit on the permitted uses, basically limited to all the things I mentioned before concerning typical uses for a courts complex. If the DT goes through, all the uses that are allowed in DT zoning would, be allowed to locate here as well. And this zone is probably the most, or offers the most variety as far as the types of uses allowed within it. The dimensional requirements, it's same as I mentioned before concerning the height. There's also language on parking requirements as well as landscaping. The Land Development Code regulates both the parking and the landscape requirements. And I failed to mention, but it's our understanding that the property currently serves as the court complex for the county, and it's not anticipated that this will change in the foreseeable future. Finally, there are some additional standards to be met by the court complex, including conditions about the trash receptacles located at least 20 feet from a street sidewalk, the mechanical equipment placed on the roof or rear side of the building where it must be screened from public view. Those are items that are currently regulated within the building form standards of the Land Development Code concerning the transect zones. There's a condition about lighting to be provided to satisfy the Land Development Code requirements. Lighting is regulated by the current Land Development Code. And then there's a statement about what sidewalk widths would be required along the different streets. As you see there, sidewalk widths are addressed in the building form standards for the transect zones. The subject property is bounded by 2nd Avenue, Southwest 2nd Avenue, Southwest 2nd Street, 4th Avenue, and South Main Street. All of these are designated as storefront streets under the current urban zone street type classification, and the minimum sidewalk width would be 10 feet. And then the internal streets, which would be Southwest 3rd Avenue and Southwest 1st Street, they're designated as local streets, and the minimum sidewalk width for local streets is 6 feet. So you can compare that to what the PD requires, and you have to determine whether is that a significant difference, or how does that impact future development? With that, staff does recommend approval of petition LD 22-000069. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. The applicants are here, and I believe they do have a presentation to give to the board.
I have one question, and I can't remember the details of the petition, but I remember it being something that caused some discussion. It was like to the rear of the site, there was a petition within the last handful of years. I think it was pre-COVID, so it was probably 4 or 5 years ago now. Something about, was it changing the designation of the street, or was it rezoning? Mr. Persons is nodding his head. You remember what I was talking about? Can you just like refresh my memory as to what the controversy there was, or what we changed? I think it might have just been the street type, and I can't remember like what the issue was.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like a straightforward thing.
Right. It, Andrew Persons, special advisor. Fancy title. If I remember, there was a Trimark property that was proposed for the what was the
like
old
across
Jones
from the
B-side
courthouse or
property
something,
there?
yeah.
Just to the west of the courthouse, and that side street was designated, I think, a storefront street, or it was one of the urban designations, which didn't really make a whole lot of sense because there wasn't that sort of characteristics that would do that. And so that came to the commission. For the life of me, I can't remember what happened, if they approved it or if they denied it.
I just remember it being like really controversial for like what the change was.
Yeah, I think.
I don't remember exactly either.
I take it back. I think what happened was, if you remember I'm digging deep into my lizard brain here. There was a longer stretch of street that we were going to take the storefront designation off of. What the commission ended up doing was taking it off of some portion of the street as it abutted the subject property, but then they left it on the other portion. So it did get approved. It was just not exactly as it was originally
Not the whole
proposed.
thing. Okay. Yeah, because I just remembered there was something that bordered this property, and I wanted to like try to remember what the issue was in reference to this, and I couldn't like for the life of me.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Persons. Oh, Mr. Ackerman might have a follow-up here.
Question for Mr. Simmons.
Oh, Mr. Simmons.
Thank you for turning my microphone on because I couldn't hear me.
My question is, the limitations on the height on the PD right now include Second Avenue and Second Terrace, and neither of those are, I mean, Second Avenue is, but I'm not sure which street it
Second
is.
Street and Second Place.
Yeah, Second
It's
Place.
right up there, yeah.
So my question is, it appears that all of the, I'm squeaking. It appears that all of the properties surrounding that are DT. So do they have the limitations, meaning across the street from those, the height limitations that are imposed on the PD?
If DT is implemented, those height conditions would go away.
I understand,
And-
but right this minute, I mean, our problem, I mean, our issue apparently is the PD has some more restrictive requirements than DT zoning does, and you've given us that list of things. And one of which had to do with a height limitation along Second,
Southwest Second Street, south of Second Place, which I believe is this little strip right here.
okay,
So I think that restriction would be in this area.
so my question is, everything to the west of that that is currently DT would not be subject to any of those height limitations?
That's correct.
Okay, so we basically got an anomaly where this piece has a restricted height level and everything around it does not.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for staff? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to the applicant's presentation.
Madam Chair, Christopher Gamir. I'm the civil engineer representing Alachua County in this instance, and I also have with us Ralph Hilliard. If there's any questions come up, he's just very familiar with this PD and the Tri-City area, the CCD stuff that was in place in 2001 when the original PD was in place. All right, with that, that is us. We end up having to have 2 neighborhood workshops because the first one, we only got a pertinent portion of the mailouts that went out. So to cover everything, we did a second one, and we covered all our bases on all the neighborhood workshops. That was very important. As you know, we're going from the PD zoning to the DT zoning on this property. As you can see, it's surrounded on the west, north, and east sides with existing DT zoning, and to the south, it's all mixed use, either with the urban transit zoning or some other type of mixed use from the previous code designations. You can also see with the central, I'm sorry, what's the land use overlay? Urban core, thank you, Mr. Simmons. The urban core already designates this as an allowable zoning in this area, so we're not going against the land use at all. What prompted all of this was this is sort of the next phase in the whole courts complex coming on board. Alachua County put out an RFP, which DLR Group was awarded the contract on that, in which we're designing court services complex at the southwest corner. It's going to be a 2-story building. It's going to be consolidating a lot of small little offices throughout downtown into this one facility. It really does a lot of outreach. We have a lot of people that need post-court services, pre-court services that'll be coming to this building. Right now, we're planning on augmenting parking in the area by adding on-street parking. And so it was just really important because of the limitations of the PD that this next building by the PD wouldn't even be allowed at this southwest corner. And I'll get into that in a little bit. So the PD actually had the site designated into 5 phases. So the first phase was to the north. It's what's done, the big main courthouse building, okay, and the associated infrastructure with it. The second phase, which happened, I think, sort of similar with the first phase construction, was to add those parking areas there and to demolish some older single-family homes that are on those properties for parking. Phase 3 was the public defender's building that was done, and those 3 phases were done. But of course, back in 2001, they envisioned phase 4 to be a second phase of the major courthouse, a multi-story building along the street frontage. Well, we're not to that point yet. It's been 20 years. We're not to that point, and we're wanting to move on to the fifth phase to put a building here, but the PD limitations just kept that from happening. And on top of that, it made sense with the new DT zoning transects. This old PD was ahead of its time. That's why so many of the conditions of the PD are reflected in the DT zoning without much change substantially from the look and feel that the old PD was trying to preserve. So staff already went through them. You can see 2 and 3 were completely satisfied. 5 was satisfied. Even 6 and 7 were satisfied because there was petroleum sites in the area that were of concern, but that's been completely cleared out. So there's not even an environmental concern. As far as stormwater goes, there's a 90% impervious area allocation for this entire block inside of the Depot Park Regional Stormwater System. So stormwater's even taken care of. They did a lot of planning back in 2001 for this. We take care of our trees a lot better than we did in 2001. We protect them better now. 9, 10, we're all completely satisfied. 11 is also satisfied. 11 had to do with construction activity with these neighborhoods, but Public Works and the recent activity have been really good at managing construction activity and paths for construction vehicles and materials delivery to sites in all of the city. So that's, again, something that's changed a lot since 2001. There's been several right-of-way vacations that were proposed with that original PD, but now with the form-based code, we now have block length standards. We now have urban walkways that can be put in place if we decide to vacate certain right-of-ways. We have controls and things in place that keep blocks walkable and keep the feel of the city to feel like a downtown that's active. So again, those are also being protected. Yeah, just so many of them were satisfied. And then again, the city went through the extra effort of going through even the old CCD requirements and the Tri-City overlay requirements that maybe would be modified or changed, but even those are very close to the same sort of feeling that they had back in 2001. I'm not going to spend much more time on this. Again, this is just showing what we're proposing in the area that we're proposing it. And then you also just talked about the storefront streets. I think a lot of the plan was to have this be a more active block. And that's why the storefront street designation was done around these areas. And again, as Mr. Ackerman brought up, the properties to the west don't have those height restriction requirements associated with them. And on top of that, if it makes the board feel better, our first site plan along there will only be a 2-story building along there. And that should stay for several decades. And with that, we're here and available if you have any questions, and we request approval for the petition. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Great, thank you. Any questions for the applicant from the board? Okay, thank you.
Try to make it brief.
Yep, perfect. Then we have an affected party. Do you have a presentation? Would you like to come forward at this time?
Members of the board, I'm John Hudson. I represent Charles Stedham, who is also an affected party. Both of us own parcels in that area. We do not oppose the courthouse complex. What we want you to do is to keep the conditions of the PD. The original county courthouse Judge Cates determined in the late 1990s that there just wasn't enough space there. And he actually had to go to the point of issuing a court order to Alachua County that they had to solve the problem. Where could they expand the courthouse? It was Alachua County's courthouse. It wasn't big enough anymore. What were they going to do? At that time, I was the president of Skinner and Associates, Architects and Engineers. we were employed by Alachua County as their continuing services, architects and engineers. So, county came to us and they said, we got to expand the courthouse. What are we going to do? We want you to come up with 3 alternatives. And then we will go to the courts, and if they approve that, we'll go to Gainesville and work with that. Also, they put out a big publicity deal to get the taxpayers of Alachua County to agree to a 1 cent tax for 1 year for a court complex. Nothing else. No baseball fields, nothing. Courts. And that, by golly, passed. They got that. The people voted. They collected the taxes, and I've got copies out of the papers here announcing that they were going to do it, and after it was done. Well, getting back to us trying to find a place for the courthouse to go. Think about downtown. There really isn't any place. The first thing that occurred to us was, why wasn't the existing courthouse able to be expanded? We knew the architect that designed it had to know that the county was growing. There would be a need for a larger court. So I went and talked to the architect, and he said, oh yeah, it was all in the design. Design to the east, expand to the east. Well, guess what? Public Works came along. They made a bunch of modifications to the roads and the utilities in that area. The Alachua County Library District came along and decided right across the street that was going to be the main library, and it is today. So as a result, the courthouse that had been designed to be able to be expanded could not be expanded to the east as it was designed. So we said, okay, how about expand it to the west? We don't think anybody's going to be happy with that, because it would mean expanding it right into O'Diddley Plaza. And indeed, nobody was happy with that. Another alternative that was presented was that the county already owned land out by the jail. And I said, this is easy. We don't have to buy anything. We get plenty of room, don't have to haul the prisoners into town anymore. What a capital idea. We'll build it out of the jail. The judges said, no, we are not going to be out at the jail. Downtown is where a courthouse needs to be. So we said, okay. And we looked and looked and looked. And we said, well, how much property do you need for this expandable courthouse, for all the courts to be together? Because they desperately wanted to be together. They don't like half the courts over there and half the courts over here. That really complicates everything for the clerk of the courts and for everybody that works in the courts. And so we identified this 6-block area as being large enough to hold a courthouse that would have the civil and the criminal courts, would also have space for a public defender's office. It would have space for court services. It would have space for the state, attorney's office. And there was much discussion about that with the county commission at that time. And they said, well, whatever you do, don't screw up again. Don't build us a courthouse that can't be expanded, that we can't get all of the courts on this parcel. So, we don't have any objection to building the building that they want to build in the place they want to build it. What we do have a very sincere objection to is removing the number one condition that was on the PD, that this land be used only for the courts. That's it. Nothing else. Couldn't build a library, no matter how bad you needed one. Nope, not there. Going to have to go elsewhere. So we're going to hold this parcel in the bank, as it were. And people talked about it taking up to 50 years to eventually build out the whole complex. Courthouses take a long time. They take government dollars. A lot of times we don't have it. So you go on and on. Well, when I heard about this, I asked the planning division if it was possible. I didn't think it was, but if it was possible under straight ET to put a condition that that area had to be used only for the courts. They said, nope, it's straight zoning. You've got a planned development. It does that. It was obviously that was the intent of everybody involved. The courts, the Alachua County Commission, Gainesville Commission, Plan Board, everybody. So that's how that PD got established. If you change it to straight zoning, there's no telling what the county is going to do. And just to give you an example of that, when the courthouse was being built, the corner of Southwest 4th Avenue and Southwest 2nd Street, there was an old dental office. And that was the construction office while the courthouse was being built. As soon as the contractors moved out of there, Charlie Jackson, you've probably heard that name recently in politics, he decided it would be a capital idea to move facilities management up there. I went to a plan board meeting and said, you can't do that. It's a PD. Condition number one, you gotta be part of the courts. Are you guys courts? Well, we clean the courts. Well, no, that doesn't measure up. You can't be the garbage company of the courts either, or the window washer of the courts. You gotta be court. Real court, in order that we would have the land that we need, that we wouldn't do to the taxpayers of Alachua County what had been done in the past. We should have learned from that. we have an application, and we discussed all that as to, well, okay, you've got this great courthouse down here. What could you do with that? Well, we've got this really ugly county administration building across the street. It could be demolished. Those people could move just across Bo Diddley Plaza into that lovely courthouse building, and it would really resolve a lot of our space needs. And the Bo Diddley Plaza presumably could even be expanded. That'd be a great thing, some more green space downtown. But if you can't get the courts out of that building, and they want to come out of it, the building is full now. They need to go and be attached to this building, and they need to be attached to the south wall. Why? Because that's where the elevators are. All of the elevators for all of the floors are there. That's the way the conceptual building was designed. So there really isn't, our fear is that you do straight zoning. Yeah, they'd be able to do anything, really anything. So the number one condition would get smudged out for the convenience, of this. The other alternative they've got is to simply amend the PD. This is just a rearrangement on the PD. So we don't want you to throw it into straight zoning. We want to keep that condition to protect the people of Alachua County from additional expense, have space to build a courthouse that is logical, have space for the county administration people to go. It's a big chain, one moves and the next one moves and then the next one moves. So I ask you tonight not to do what Alachua County has hired Mr. Gmer to come here and ask you to do, because that wasn't the deal back then. And it importantly wasn't the deal because you were playing with taxpayer dollars. That you went out and you said, we're going to build you a courthouse complex that's going to last, and we're never going to have to do this again. Can I answer any questions?
Any questions for Mr. Hudson? I think that was very useful information and background. I found it really interesting. Mr. Ackerman.
Yeah, it was like world history came back to me in a flash. I forgot about all that stuff. I'm not sure what Alachua County seeks to do, but first I want to compliment you for something that is pretty unusual lately, which is a rational presentation.
Thank you.
And I appreciate that very much. It's your position that we could achieve the same thing by keeping the PD, perhaps adopting all of the DT requirements, except maintaining the requirement that it be reserved for courthouse services.
That's correct.
Okay, so you wouldn't object to getting rid of the building limitation heights and stuff like that? It's
No,
just
we don't
these-
have any objection to
Okay.
that at all.
Okay, thank you. That's what I wanted to know. Then I have a question for Mr. Gamur or Mr. Hilliard, whoever wants to talk.
Thank you.
I guess my question is, what is the purpose for doing this? Meaning, do they plan to use some of that property for multi-use retail and stuff? Or is your concern that we would not be allowed to build that two-story building in the southwest corner?
Great question. I'm going to start by sort of not answering it. There is no condition to just be court services in the existing PD, as it is today. So that is a non-condition of the existing PD. But on the further that point, the design build that's already at the contract right now and will be going to construction in late 2023 is already for court services. The county has substantial offices spread out over the entire area that they're looking to consolidate and get a lot of efficiency in moving to this building. So I think that's a good faith showing from Alachua County courts that they're still valuing this property for a consolidation of services. Again, it comes to funding and how fast they're able to do that. And we're leaving a nice spot for the civil courthouse to come over to,
Yeah, civil courthouse.
to come over to this area in the future. Matter of fact, that's going to be a condition of our site plan approval to say, well, why is this building you're proposing? It's 2 stories. Why isn't it along the largest street? Why isn't it next to Main Street? That would normally be a requirement. And we're going to have to justify to the board why we're moving it to the southwest corner and why we're making room and planning for that future court building in the future. So that would be my reasoning of a good faith effort by the courts.
So what violence would be done to your petition if we did as Mr. Hudson would agree to or agrees would be a good idea, which is we save the PD, we amend the PD and add basically all of the DT uses and restrictions and allowances, except for adding that that block will be restricted for court services.
And that's a great question. We've had this conversation with Ramon. And the conversation is escalating construction costs. This design build was done as a fixed budget process. And the longer we take for that process, including...
Are you telling me this 2-story building is not for court services?
No, I'm sorry. The escalating cost of construction means that this court services building we're proposing right now, if we take the extra time of a custom PD rezoning on the property, which requires a little bit more time to put it together, make sure all the conditions are correct, maybe we would get additional conditions added to the revised PD as they go along, and also going in front of the city commission, they may add some additional conditions to the PD as we go for approval, could add enough time delay that the escalating costs would then make the public project more expensive. And it seemed like the DT zoning and the existing PD were so close. And there wasn't a limitation on uses on that original PD. So again, we're confused by what's being lost by going to straight zoning.
I guess I don't understand, and maybe you can clarify for us. Why can you not do the 2-story building with the existing PD? It complies with the height limitations. It's a court use, whether that's in there or not. Why can you not do the 2-story building with the existing PD? Why are you coming back to change the zoning at all?
The phasing schedule. That was in the map.
Okay. So rather than changing the phasing schedule and cleaning up the old conditions, it was just a matter of you thought it would be easier to go straight.
There's other things. That's a great point, Madam Chair. There was on-street parking allowances. There was things that were done that we would do differently nowadays that the DT zoning would allow us to do. For example, there's a large bank of electrical going along the west side there because GRU upgraded services along there. And the way adding on-street parking with the way that the sidewalk zone, landscape zone can be adjusted in width, can accommodate those in ways that the CCD just really didn't have in those codes. It just really solved a bunch of issues with the site plan design, the old PD, and moving forward with our current project and looking ahead towards the master plan.
So your major, I'm sorry, Madam Chair, your major objection at this point is not to the proposal that Mr. Hudson has suggested. It's just a timing issue for you.
No, both. I don't think that's preserving anything that was at the spirit of the original PD. It would have likely been a major condition of that PD, and it wasn't. It's not listed in there.
Okay, Mr. Hudson, is that accurate? Did I miss something? I thought that was the number 1 condition.
It was, it is. Jason had a slide up there. It's number one. I mean, that was the really big thing, is just don't screw it up again. You know, you've already made this mistake once, and Alachua County can, and their representatives can come up here and say, oh, our intentions are golden. We're gonna do it right. We're not, but once the straight zoning is there, it's there. And then there isn't any way for me to do what I was hired to do many years ago by Alachua County. So the buildings can be taller, that's a minor adjustment. Moving a building around, that's a minor adjustment. Our big thing is that this 6-block area must be reserved for the courts, because that's how much area it's gonna take.
Sir, you can come up. Just please state your name for the record.
Thank you all very much. I'm Charles Stedham. I'm a property owner in the area, but more importantly, I'm a citizen of Alachua County that voted for that tax referendum. A judicial mandate called for all of this to move forward. It was put before a vote. The citizens of Alachua County approved that vote. It was funded for the specific purpose of being judicial services area, that entire 6 blocks. It would be unconscionable, in my opinion, and a betrayal of the public trust for anything to be done with that 6 blocks other than to serve the needs of the judicial system of Alachua County. It doesn't matter to me if there's a 12-story building across the street from me or a 2-story building, as long as the public trust is preserved and that 6-block area is used for nothing. It's not a pizza parlor. It's not anything but what the judges need it to be to serve the citizens of Alachua County that paid for it. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Simmons, there's a little bit of confusion between the applicant and the affected parties as to the uses allowed in the PD. Are you able to step up and clarify that for us?
Madam Chair, board members, the uses allowed in the PD are all related to a courthouse complex, court services, whether it's a courthouse itself or the accessory uses like the victim services or the public defender's office, but they're all court-related uses. That's what's currently allowed in the PD.
Okay, great, thank you. I really appreciate you all taking time to come to the meeting, and I did not have that background, and I appreciate that thought, and I would encourage us to move forward along those lines. I've always heard, and I think, the only thing that I've really voted on that was close to this area was that street that we talked about to the rear of the site. And I remember at that time, we talked about, well, this is going to be the future civil courthouse, and this is the master plan, and that's the way it's going to be. And so I would hate for us to change something that especially was the result of, whatever condition. I may or may not have been in Gainesville. I don't remember all the things I voted on when I was here in college. So I'm not sure that I voted on that. But I want to respect the voters and the taxpayers and the intent of when that land was purchased and the original courthouse was built. And I think there's a lot of benefits to having those things together. We did see, I was on the board when I think it's the public defender's office that's over there now, they had to come to the plan board because that was a condition. And so I remember seeing that site plan come, and I think that it's an important civic function, and to keep all those things together is an important thing to do, particularly because it was voted on that way. So I think I agree with a lot of what Mr. Ackerman had to say here. Mr. Hilliard?
Madam Chair, members of the Plan Board. I was around back then when all these discussions, and maybe Mr. Hudson and I are remembering things a little bit differently. I don't remember it being a situation where the PD was developed in order to say that this particular site, that we were going to use the PD to control the use of this site as a courthouse when it's actually the responsibility of the county and the judges to make that determination of where they're going to have the courthouse. There's nothing about this particular change or about the PD that will prevent the county or the judges of moving the courthouse somewhere else. If times change or there was some situation where they felt that another site was more conducive, they could still move that courthouse and this site could be vacant. And then they will come back and probably ask the city or the city again to change that use because times have changed. There is nothing about this petition that is saying that the courthouse is going to move anywhere. They are putting money and resources into the site. There's only one piece of property left on the site to be developed, and that's the civil courts. And once that's done, it's complete. I would just say that this petition was trying to make it easier for the county and the city, basically. I mean, it costs more to do a PD. It costs more. It takes a lot more time in order to do that. But our reading of the PD, that language, does not prevent the county from coming back, asking for changes to that language. If you look at all the PDs that the city done back then and prior, usually the language did just simply say these are the uses allowed. We got away from that years after that because we knew that that was too restrictive. But I would say that this PD does not restrict the county from making changes or moving the site somewhere else. We would hope that you would look at the totality of this, that it's the county's responsibility and the judge's responsibility about where the courthouse go. They determine that this is where it goes. If there's an issue about the taxes raised, then that's an issue that the citizens can take up with the court. I'll just leave you with that. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, just to add one more thing. If the concern is the citizens, then I think evidence tonight has shown how much of an impact this petition is having on the concern of the area and the whole downtown area, as far as the turnout we've gotten from the community. When we had our neighborhood workshop, that was properly noticed and mailed out, so some people got the notice twice. Some of them only got it one time, but to do the proper neighborhood workshop, this group was the only one to show up at that meeting. And so if I think the concern can be boiled down to whether or not the existing PD was limited to just court uses, and that's something we can research more and give you a really firm answer back on. And so if that is the concern, then I'd be happy to continue with this to get you that information, because it sounds like we're making a decision based off people's recollection of the conditions of the PD. And that would be my request to the board.
I mean, our staff verified that, so I don't know. I mean, it sounds like you're disagreeing
I don't feel
with
comfortable
staff.
with that.
You don't feel comfortable with the PD conditions as they've, I guess, been memorialized by Mr.
Can we get
Simmons?
that slide back up?
Yes,
Somebody
please.
from
If
the
that's
back room
condition
bring
one,
up,
it's not there.
Jason's slide that had some of the conditions? Yeah, can we, I mean, I think we saw it. I didn't print that, so I don't have it in front of me, but, I mean, Mr. Nay's reading it right now. So can we go back to the slide that had the conditions?
There were 3 slides with conditions.
Yeah, go to the first one.
I mean, I think there's two things, you know, that we really, the two big picture items when you look at the zoning of a property, right? There's the uses allowed and there's the design standards that you have to be held to. It sounds like the design standards, the affected parties are totally flexible on. The uses, however, you know, I think there's a lot of uses allowed in DT that maybe shouldn't be right next to a courthouse, right? So I'm open to restricting uses for a number of reasons. I do agree, you know, we should be designing to Transect standards in downtown, but I don't see how what's existing in the PD is in huge conflict with that.
Yeah, and it's on the staff report, it's not on your slides.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember seeing it somewhere. I don't have it brought up on my computer.
And as an aside, in your backup, in the staff report, there is the copy of the PD, which if you go to one of the tables, it does list the uses that are allowed in the PD.
So it sounds like Alachua County's concerns, that's what I'm hearing, are the phasing table, and I get that. Old PDs, you have to update the phasing. The phasing table and an issue related to electrical and the dimensional standards, because there's a new electrical line that the PD dimensional standards and the street setbacks don't work with. Those are your two primary concerns, Mr. Gamer?
That was just one example, but the city spent a lot of time on the Transect standards, the street types.
Oh, we know. You don't have to
GRU,
tell us
right?
that.
That have created a lot of fixes for the downtown situation that we're in. We're not getting any more land downtown. And so all that work has gone into preparing the downtown area to be the urban core that was planned for, to provide these kinds of public services, areas for recreation, for families to come downtown, for our college students to come downtown, and bringing this into that guidance would be very helpful. And then there's other ways to do it besides a full PD. We could do a deed restriction to just courthouse services. There's other solutions by doing a new PD, going through that process, when it felt like the DT zoning mirrored this PD very identically in almost every other way. We wouldn't have come to you with this if we didn't sit down with staff and thought this was the most logical argument based off the current opinions of the city commission, of development patterns, the reaction from the community. I was anticipating a mail out to all of downtown to have a lot more people show up, but it was really just the two gentlemen that are here tonight.
Thank you.
By the way, we don't do it by how many people show up.
Oh, I understand.
There's a lot more
But you've
taxpayers
also been
that
involved
contributed to this than
in all
just
these
the
conversations.
400-foot notice. I think that's what's unique about this.
And you've heard from the
Is-
city commission. You've been on the front line of that conversation tremendously. Yeah.
Thank you. So I think just we're loosely following the informal hearing process today. If anyone has any other final rebuttal, any final comments, I'd like to give staff the chance to come up first, and then the applicant, and then the affected parties, and we'll open it to public comment following that. So staff, do you have any final comments, rebuttal at all that you would like to share? You don't have to. Okay, then we'll have the applicant Mr. Edelton.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Forrest Edelton, Acting Director for the Department of Sustainable Development. I think, all of the arguments have already been made. Maybe I can just put a little bit of icing on some of the things that have been said from staff's perspective. So for this one, it's a rare situation where we're kind of able or comfortable of supporting both paths here. What I would say is that staff, of course, believes in our transect zoning, and we believe in the outcomes that come from that transect zoning. We also believe in that is related to the uses that are there. What I would recommend from staff side is that zoning is not always the best tool to regulate a specific user, while it may be a good tool for regulating uses. So it's a little bit of a nuance there. And again, you know, as staff, we're able to support both, or at least in a conceivable way. We certainly can work with the applicant to amend the PD, but obviously we also recommended going to the straight zoning here. But the straight zoning from staff's perspective is something that is easier to manage, easier to maintain, and doesn't fall into sort of a regulating by user rather than use. Thanks.
Thank you. Would the applicant like to have a final rebuttal?
Madam Chair, I think if the still concerns are still there, and considering that this is an argument that we hadn't prepared for, we would ask for a continuance so that we can go back to county staff, their management staff, and figure out what's the best way, doing additional research on this item, and come back to you at the next meeting.
Okay.
That would be our preference.
Okay, thank you. And do the affected parties have any final comments?
Yes, ma'am. Can I have the overhead? Okay, this is a off the internet, what was in the Gainesville paper back then. It says, the county negotiating with 10 property owners to buy land in this area. The purchase is one more step in the county's efforts to comply with Chief Judge Robert Cates' order. As another measure, the county commission on Tuesday night is scheduled to consider an ordinance imposing an additional tax. The county commission is expected to pass the ordinance. They did. Taxpayers paid it. This was prior to construction. This is after. This is Commissioner Long. He said, "I'm here to tell you there were promises made and promises kept. And I'm here to ask you to keep those promises." It was clear that this whole piece of land was needed, a piece that big was needed to be positive we didn't have to build a split courthouse again. This is a matter of convenience for the county. This is the easiest way for them to do it, to go to straight zoning. But if that straight zoning had been in place when Charlie Jackson decided that that building on that corner would become a facilities management office, it would be right now. But there was a PD. It said only courts and, let's see if I can get to, well, I can't do that, but it's condition number 1. It's related to the courts. So that's what I'm asking you to do, to keep faith with the taxpayers of Alachua County and to do the logical thing. Let's don't make the mistake over again. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any other public comment on this item?
Thank you, Chair. Actually, it won't be on the commission. I think this comes before the commission, but it's a piece of property that I've thought about a lot on, and the PD, and I think the PD should have been changed a while ago. The voters passed that. They voted to build that courthouse. Not even the news story there showed they were purchasing the land before the tax even went through. But also, I don't think the city of Gainesville should be the one regulating the property through our PD. That's the county's job to make sure they follow whatever things they had. Secondly, on kind of a more kind of urban planning portion, having large government structure, government massive blocks create huge dead zones in our city. And that has changed from kind of when this was proposed. If we're kind of, people don't build these massive urban blocks anymore and don't build massive government buildings. As you can see, you go by that area, it's dead. There's a parking lot there, but it's a dead area. And it becomes just only court services. There's not other uses. And you could build a 12-story mixed-use building. There could be court services in there. And a lot of other cities do that. They have mixed uses inside of an office building. You allow more uses. You don't create a dead donut in the heart of our downtown. So I think that's one of the main reasons. I don't think that's what they're trying to do, other things, but I think that's an opportunity we should give future county commissions to be able to ensure that we don't have a dead zone in the middle of our downtown, and to allow build housing or other things. We have a lot of needs in our community. Thank you. So I would say go with the downtown zoning. I think that is best for our community. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any other members of the public that wish to speak to this item? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion or a motion.
I'd make a comment, and then I guess I'd make a motion. I'm willing to continue this for a month. I don't know that you can come up with something that will persuade me that keeping the PD and modifying it isn't a better route than, and of course PDs could be modified all the time. And if it came to a point where we, for some reason, wanted to do something else, we could. But I was here and I did vote for, one penny, 1 year, one courthouse. And it was clear that that's what that complex was intended to be. And I don't disagree with Commissioner Hayes Santos that at certain times of the day, in the evening particularly, it's not a lively place. But the rest of the time, it's pretty lively. And it obviously is a key feature of most downtowns. And so I would be more inclined to change the uses and maintain the PD and modify the uses to meet the county's requirements, but also add the use that 6 blocks be maintained for court services. And with that, if nobody else has a comment, I would move that we continue this to our next
I don't know if that's going to give them enough time.
Yeah, we're in the holidays. Our next regularly scheduled meeting is actually November 9th. We also have one pending November.
It's like December
10th? Or something. So
yeah.
I'm not sure which one, but we would allow.
We don't have a problem with the 9th, as we'll either be coming to you with additional information, or we'll be addressing you that we're taking a different path at that time. It's just giving us more time to look into and do
I
some more
understand. We
research.
just have kind of a jumbled schedule
I
right
see what
now.
you're
So,
saying.
but we will do it. I would make a motion that we move it to our next regularly scheduled meeting, which would be November 9th. But if that turns out to not be feasible, we could bump it to the next one, which I think is going to be after Thanksgiving in early December.
Mm-hmm.
We got
So
a
either
vote?
November 9th or December 8th.
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a second for that?
What second?
Okay. All those in favor of continuing the item, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so 3 to continue, 1 opposed. Thank you all for coming. Thank you for the history lesson. And hopefully you all can go back to the county and work something out. We will see you at a future meeting. Okay, Mr. Castillo, can you read the next item into the record, please?
Sure. LD 22-142, sidewalk text amendment. The City of Gainesville is the applicant, requesting to amend the City of Gainesville Land Development Code in order to introduce exemption provisions for sidewalk requirements pertaining to single-family residential properties. I will be presenting this before you. If you'll excuse me, I need to grab that clicker really quick.
Yep.
I'll be right back. For the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I'm a planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. Started you there, didn't I? This is a request to amend the sidewalk requirements within the Land Development Code to allow provisions for a fee in lieu of for infill single-family homes. Currently, the City of Gainesville Land Development Code requires that all development, regardless of whether it's a single-family property or large-scale development, to install sidewalks. Most developments have been able to meet this requirement. However, when it comes to infill single-family homes, what staff is repeatedly encountering is a situation where an infill single-family dwelling construction is going into a neighborhood that characteristically does not have sidewalks. This situation creates several adverse impacts. The result is usually a disconnected sidewalk, which has the potential to create hazardous conditions for pedestrians via the introduction of uneven surfaces. Let's see, there we go. So this is an example of what I'm referring to right here. And this is an example of a neighborhood that doesn't normally have sidewalks, but with the introduction of a sidewalk would find itself being uncharacteristic. So basically, the disconnected sidewalk portion introduces a juxtaposition of concrete next to a grassy area, which again goes to create this uneven surface and goes on to potentially create a hazardous condition for a pedestrian. And this becomes even more problematic if that pedestrian happens to be somehow an elderly or impaired or any, a child, etc. The next portion to this is that the disconnected sidewalk introduces an urban logic disconnect, meaning that when a pedestrian is on a sidewalk, they are expecting to go to a place that is connected. The sidewalk leads them to a place. The sidewalk also informs the pedestrian where to walk. So when the sidewalk terminates abruptly or is not connected to a destination, the pedestrian is left to kind of argue within themselves whether to walk on the sidewalk or walk on the street. Usually what they end up doing is walking on the street because the street connects them to the location where they want to go. That's another example of an urban logic disconnect. And lastly, it introduces an aesthetic adverse impact to a community. Case in point, if it's not a neighborhood that consistently has a sidewalk network, for lack of better terminology, a piece of concrete in front of a house looks ugly. And so this piece of concrete, if it's not connected, seems like a mistake for people walking by. It doesn't really make any sense, and it just doesn't really go along with the characteristic of a neighborhood that is consistently lacking the sidewalk. So in order to mitigate these items, staff is proposing the introduction of language into our land development code that would give staff more flexibility when it comes to sidewalk requirements. This would only apply to single-family house constructions in the form of a fee in lieu of. And this should seem fairly familiar to you. You've seen and heard it before. But just to kind of quickly go through it, this option again will only be applicable to single-family homes and will not be applicable to multifamily homes or a commercial development. And the idea is to, again, provide flexibility for single-family homeowners and mitigate the potential for a sidewalk to go into a neighborhood, create hazardous conditions, and create adverse impacts with that is non-characteristic to a single-family neighborhood. Now, to clarify, the fee in lieu of option, again, as I mentioned, will only be available to single-family home infill and yes, so in areas that is not reasonable to expect for future development to install sidewalks in. So if again, you're going into a neighborhood that lacks sidewalk, it's not reasonable to expect that all the houses within a block or two would be torn down and new sidewalks would be installed with new houses being built on that neighborhood. So the goal here is not to necessarily waive the sidewalk construction requirement, but rather to be able to pay a mitigatory fee so that we will have the option of in the future installing sidewalks with the funds that are being collected. And this fund will be collected based on the MDPA zone that the sidewalk is being required of. Currently, we are looking into the process of collecting the fees similar to TMPA fees are collected now. And then that fee would be used within that TMPA zone that the fee is being collected. And I know that was one of the concerns the first time this item came before you, was the mechanism of how that fee was going to get collected and how it was going to be used. And right now, staff believes that the best and easy, more straightforward way to collect that fee and use it would be to use our existing TMPA zones and apply it to them. And just for reference, these are current TMPA zones as they are now. I know that staff is working potentially on a proposal to amend these, but as of right now, this is what our TMPA zones look like. And with that, I conclude my presentation. If there are any questions, I am here and available to answer.
Who's number 3? Is that Josh? Yep, go ahead, Josh.
I noticed that this is only, you said this is only applying to single family zone, because I just know personally, like I bike down Southeast 9th Street every day and there's these 2 duplexes and they've got a sidewalk in front of them that's disconnected from everything else. Is there a reason why we're only doing those kind of areas? Only single family infill?
So maybe you can give us, so this has come to the plan board, I want to say we talked about it at 2 different meetings because we had debate over how the fees would be collected in the areas. We made Scott come and talk to us about TMPA areas and whether we could do more, restrictive, neighborhood projects and things, and that's how we ended up on the TMPA. But I don't know what happened when it went to the city commission and why it's back to us now, because we were pretty clear with our recommendation and we hashed this out over 2 meetings, like I said. So maybe you can give us a little bit of background on why the city commission did not move this forward and they sent it backwards instead.
Sure. So to simplify it, the commission had concerns of the mechanism of collecting the fees and using the fees. And so the commission first wanted staff to be able to work on that and bring it before them again for a second review. And also they wanted to, again, just clarify that mechanism to make sure that that it was something that, of course, it's not gonna have like an exaction component to it, but that made sense and was sustainable as far as the execution of that process.
Okay, thank you. So I support this. I supported this the first time around. I do have a couple of clarifying questions. When we're talking about who's going to make the decision as to whether the sidewalks will be waived or not, it's not clear to me. You know, it says the appropriate reviewing authority. Does that mean Public Works? Does it mean the Transportation Department? Does it mean the planner? Who's deciding? Because a lot of times this may just be coming in through a building permit. You know, Scott, who I think is the appropriate person to determine some of this, I don't think isn't involved in building permits. So I'm curious as to like who is making that decision. That's question number one. And then question number two is, I think that this is inherently included as well, but if it needs to be expressly worded in there, I would like for the money to be able to be used for crosswalk improvements as well, not just constructing new sidewalks, but improving crosswalks if we need ramps, if we need striping. I think that that's part of the sidewalk network, and sometimes it's the intersection that needs the work, not necessarily just building a new piece of concrete. So I'd like to be clear that we can include and use the money for crosswalk improvements as well, if that's not inherently included, and I'm not 100% sure that it is. So those are my two thoughts.
So we can definitely add that clarifying question concerning the use of the funds. We were, I think for us is we want to make sure that there's a rational nexus with how the funds are being used. We want to be sure to demonstrate that the funds are since they're being collected as sidewalk fees, that they're being used for pedestrian.
I would argue this, a crosswalk improvement is also a pedestrian improvement. So if it's at all possible, and I think that it is, I would like to include crosswalks. Because I think we have a lot of issues with accessibility and ramp improvements and things that are needed, as well as just striping and directing pedestrians to the right places. Some of, roundabouts may need to be modified. There's some intersections where pedestrians need some more direction and or they need to be made more accessible. So I think it's related in a close enough way that if it's possible to include it, it's an important thing.
We can look into that for sure. As far as the decision making, it's my understanding that we would work. It will be part of the review process for like with a building permit. So this would be a determination that will be taken by staff.
So is it the planner? Is it Matt Williams at Public Works? Scott's not a part of building permits, so that's my concern. I think, in my mind, transportation and Scott, who works with TMPA, is the right person, but I don't think that he reviews building permits. So if this becomes a part of the building permit review process, maybe we add him. My question is like, who's the person? Is it the planner? Is it Public Works, which is, I assume, Matt mostly is sort of the direction that's going. I'm just curious who the department is that owns this decision.
Sure, I can answer that, Madam Chair. Forrest Edelton, Director, Department of Sustainable Development. It's a team of departments and people that make that decision. So we were getting there with one of the questions earlier. This is to allow the fee in lieu of just for those single family applications. Everywhere else, sidewalks are required.
Yes.
Like flat out. And so in this option, it's still a team of the departments that are making that decision whether or not it's flat out required. So if there is an existing sidewalk it can connect to, for example, it's going to be required. If it's in a situation or an area that it's important to start building that network, say in a transect zone or downtown, planning staff certainly are going to require the sidewalk in those cases. If it is in a case like Mr. Castillo pointed out, where it is in a single-family house at a single-family neighborhood, infill development, there's no sidewalks connecting to it, Public Works, Planning, and Mobility will all decide together as a part of that review process that it is not required in that case. That then allows mobility to calculate the fee in lieu of. So that linear feet using a Department of Transportation number that's updated on a 6-month average. So that's a rough process for that and the calculating of the fee. So then, of course, that fee gets calculated. It's attached and associated to a project that is located in one of those zones, and that fee gets collected to a fund that can pay for that broader sidewalk connection project in the future.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions on this one? Mr. Ackerman?
Yeah, thank you. I generally support the concept. I mean, I know in some neighborhoods, particularly some of our older neighborhoods and not so old neighborhoods, there are no sidewalks at all. And I understand that if you're doing an infill lot, that it doesn't make sense. But at some point, I guess what my concern is that, for instance, this picture we have right here, where we have, and I can't tell, but it looks like we have a strip of sidewalk in front of 2 houses. Maybe it's just one, but it looks like 2. I'm beginning, at what point do we begin to say there's enough of a sidewalk network that has begun that we're now going to require that we fill it out? Or I guess it makes sense to say we've got 10 strips of sidewalk in this neighborhood, and we take the fund and we connect those strips there. I just don't want this to turn into a deal where people say, I'm building a house, I don't want to build a sidewalk. And I understand they cost money, but I think a sidewalk's important for the walkability that we're trying to have. And ultimately, I think I understand that maybe some of these older in-town neighborhoods, well, for instance, the one that one back there. See, some safety hazard. I'm not quite sure. Is the sidewalk unsafe or the lack of sidewalk unsafe? I mean, it strikes me we ought to get more sidewalk there, not less. But anyway, that was to me a very unpersuasive slide. But anyway, the main thing I want, see, that looks like I got 2 or 3 houses that have a sidewalk. It looks to me like we ought to try to get a patch of sidewalk that continues it on this way. I can't really tell. So anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I generally support the idea. Like Ms. Sutton, I would like to have it fleshed out so that we know what's going to happen rather than have it just be kind of out there. We're going to start giving waivers. And the second part is, and it wasn't clear to me, probably because I wasn't paying attention, is that if you're in a neighborhood that has no sidewalks, you still would pay a fee? Okay. Just so long as we're building a fund that eventually gets us sidewalks.
And then my recollection from before, I don't think that this has changed, is that the fund would then prioritize the areas where we can fill in gaps and where we can build a more complete network as a first priority.
Correct.
Or, maybe it's a safe route to school or something like that. And so that's why I think it's important that it's handled similarly to TMPA and things are prioritized sort of through the same process.
And just simultaneously, I would also support Ms. Sutton's concept that the fund be allowed to be used for intersection improvements, crosswalks, that kind of thing. So, and I would really agree for places like roundabouts where pedestrians frequently
go the wrong place.
Like bowling for dollars.
Sorry, we guys.
Go ahead.
All right, thank you.
Special
Welcome,
advisor.
special advisor.
That's interim special advisor. I think the conversation is really good, and I maybe it would be helpful to share. So, subsequent to when we brought this before the commission last time, the commission with this most recent budget actually increased the funding we have allocated for sidewalks between our typical sort of allocation that we receive, and then we also have money through Vision Zero allocations. So, transportation, we actually prioritize filling in gaps and then looking for, sort of the best bang for the buck in terms of new sidewalk installations. this would obviously be one more funding source, and I think is everybody sort of pointed out, the way that I think when we structured this before was trying to provide criteria both for staff making the decision of where we do and don't allow for the fee in lieu option, but also how that money gets spent, and where obviously, because this is an exaction that we're talking about, by law, we have to try to spend that money as close to the subject property where we're collecting it as possible. So we have those standards written into the code. And I do agree, I think, with the inclusion of the crosswalks. I do think that those things are connected enough within the sort of moniker, or the umbrella of sidewalks, to include in the list of, and it would be, I think, helpful while we have the opportunity to actually write it in there, because then we have clarity in the future with that piece. And there was one more point I wanted to bring up, but it has escaped me, so I'm sure it was very helpful, but if it comes to me, I'll come back up. But yeah, so that's good. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Persons. Okay, bringing it back to the board. Any other comments? We have to take public
I'm
comment
not quite
too.
sure where we are now. I mean, it sounds like we need a rewrite or, a representation. Does that sound right or no?
I think we might just need to add in the
Okay.
crosswalk part to number, is it number 2? I just put my paper away.
I remembered what it was.
Okay.
And I think if you guys just make recommendation with that additional language and try to be, specific, we'll include that, because we're all in agreement. The other thing I wanted to mention was to Mr. Nay's point, or Member Nay's point, if the commission, or if the plan board wanted to recommend duplexes as well, those are residential building permits, so they would sort of fall under the same review process. If we had a triplex, for instance, that goes through development review. So I think that's a pretty bright line in terms of like drawing a threshold. So if you wanted to include duplexes, we'd support that as staff.
That's interesting. I think I like that idea. Mr. Nay.
That was gonna be my idea.
Oh, there you go. Yeah, anything that's building permit. This is like building permit. This will apply. You can do this. I like that. Okay, let's take it for public comment. If there's anyone here from the public that would like to speak to this item, please step up.
Adrian left.
Okay. Bringing it back to the board then for probably a motion, maybe with a couple amendments to what is up there. Mr. Nay, you want to take a stab at it?
No.
We're going to train you so that we can get you to be chair or
Yeah,
vice
we're
chair
gonna
next
have
year.
to, we're gonna have to
Or
grow some courage in
somebody
this
else
board.
can step up.
Okay, I'll make a motion,
Okay.
unless you're gonna do it.
No, thank you.
Yeah. We're gonna have an electric buzzer starting next week.
The new chair is bringing some new rules.
Madam Chair, I move that we approve LD 22-142, the text amendment, with the addition that we include duplexes in that, and
And crosswalk
oh yeah, and
intersection
ensure that
improvements.
we add we permit the fund to address issues with crosswalks and other intersection issues. Anything, I don't remember
I
if
think
we had
that's
more.
all.
Yeah, all right, that's it. Thanks.
A second from Sophia. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great. Hopefully, this is the last time we talk about sidewalk fee in lieu here. You never know. Third time's a charm, guys. Third time's a charm. Mr. Castillo, can you read the next item into the record, please?
For this one, there are 2 items that are associated with my presentation. Would you like me to read one individually or both of them together?
Both together would be great.
Okay. E4 for inclusionary zoning amendments to the Land Development Code, be number 2022-679. The City of Gainesville requests to amend the Land Development Code to provide regulations establishing inclusionary zone and amend the current bonus manual. And E5, which is associated with inclusionary zoning, is Comprehensive Plan Amendment 2022 -677, and the City of Gainesville requests to amend the Comprehensive Plan's future land use element to amend density bonus language and allow bonus provisions associated with inclusionary zoning efforts. And I'll be doing those presentations for you. So, as I turn off my microphone, so for the record, my name is Juan Castillo. I'm a planner with the Department of Sustainable Development. The item before you, as I've read out, is a proposal for inclusionary zoning regulations that will help directly address a lack of affordable housing here in Gainesville. So this proposal is a result of the city's ongoing efforts to address affordable housing in Gainesville, which has progressed from the City Commission's direction, the study done by HRNA consultant groups, as well as the research done by staff. As you're aware, Gainesville is struggling to meet the demands for affordable housing. This not only affects people looking to purchase a home, but it also affects people looking to rent a place to live. It's estimated that anyone that is making $35,000 a year or less is experiencing a high rate of a housing cost burden. The median income here in Gainesville is around $37,000 a year, and around 61% of Gainesville citizens are renters. However, the market in Gainesville currently does not favor the non-student population. According to the HRNA report, 36% of all the rental units in Gainesville exclusively serve or cater to students, which exacerbates an already strained housing market. In an effort to provide more affordable housing, specifically tailored towards the rental community, staff is proposing the implementation of inclusionary zoning regulations. So, inclusionary zoning are basically regulatory tools designed to encourage developers to provide affordable housing. This tool has been used by thousands of municipalities across the country. Specific regulations vary within each jurisdiction, but for the most part, the tool works by requiring new development to provide a set of affordable housing within the scope of the development targeted at people who make a certain percentage of the area median income. Further legislation gives local municipalities the authority to use land use mechanisms, such as inclusionary zoning, to create more affordable housing. However, in May of 2019, Florida legislature passed a bill that required municipalities to fully offset the cost to a developer resulting from inclusionary zoning requirements. The offset can include things like fee waivers, expedited reviews, density bonuses, and any other exchange. This is why part of the proposal before you today includes a density bonus element. So, the proposed bonus density is 30%. In other words, if the development provides 10% of affordable housing, they receive a 30% density bonus in return. The density bonus was determined based on local market analysis by HRNA, which determined that a 30% density bonus would offset the costs associated with providing affordable housing. That analysis is within your report and can be found in your backup. After reviewing the results from the HRNA consultants analysis, staff research, and reviewing other municipalities that are currently using inclusionary zoning regulations, staff has come up with the proposal before you currently. To begin with, and as I have already alluded to, the inclusionary zoning requirement being proposed would require developers to provide 10% affordable housing units on developments that have 10 or more units for people that make 80% or less of the area median income. Developers will also be required to come into an agreement with a management organization that will be responsible for determining eligibility and pairing people with the available affordable units. To offset the affordable units, we would provide a 30% density bonus to development. And again, 30% was determined after the cost and profitability analysis done by HR. The proposal also includes a fee in lieu of provision where a developer would have the option to pay for the affordable housing units that they can't provide at a market rate established by HUD guidelines. This fee would be reviewed every 2 years. Now, the duration of the affordable units would be for the life of the project, with units having the same standards and quality as that of regular market rate units. This means that the affordable units will be identical to market rate units when it comes to the materials being used to develop these units, the services provided with the units, such as access to pools, gyms, parking, garbage removal, etc. And the affordable units would be reasonably distributed throughout the development so that there is no one concentrated area that are somehow exclusively labeled as affordable housing area. These units will be available for occupation at the same time that the regular market rate units would be available. So, to implement the proposal, several things have to happen. The first thing is an amendment to our comprehensive plan, future land use element. And basically, the amendment that we would have to do is to incorporate language within our comprehensive plan that would allow for the zonings associated with the land uses to be able to provide that density. And here's an example of what that language would look like. It's a matter of adding a sentence at the title and throughout the language of the comprehensive plan's future land use element. Again, that would give freedom for the zonings associated with the land use to have that density. These are the future land use elements that are being amended. Again, basically any land use element that allows for multifamily development would be amended with the comprehensive plan proposal, just adding that language to each individual one. Another aspect of this proposal involves eliminating an outdated density bonus manual. Currently, the City of Gainesville has a density bonus manual that developers can use to increase densities within multifamily zoning districts. This bonus manual does not include transit zones. The manual, by providing certain actions and proposals, a developer can include in their development basically in exchange for points. If the developer can gather enough points, those points can translate into density bonuses. However, the manual was adopted back in 2005 and is outdated. Again, it doesn't include or provide for the inclusion of the adopted transit zones, which were adopted back in 2017. And furthermore, the manual has seldom been used. Not that it hasn't been used, it just is not used on a repeated basis. Therefore, staff is proposing to eliminate the manual and consolidate bonus provisions into the effort of providing affordable housing. So with the elimination of the manual, the main avenues for developers to provide or to get some form of density bonuses would be to provide for tree preservation and also to provide affordable housing units within their development. Again, at that rate, at the 10% with 30% bonus exchange. This will also help encourage developers to actually provide the affordable housing. This is what the language basically will look like, and the full language is found within your backup. But language is being proposed for your review outlines requirements for, again, what a developer will have to meet in order to obtain the density bonus, regulations associated with the threshold requiring for the affordable units, and provisions for any type of voluntary buy-in for units that do not meet that 10 units threshold. So if a unit does not provide 10 units. They're not required to provide affordable housing, but if they so choose to, then they can get the 30% bonus as well. I think, well, yeah. So there's that breakup that I just mentioned, 10% at targeted for people that are making 80% of the area median income. They will receive that 30% bonus density. For developments providing 10 units or more, there's a fee in lieu of provision for developments that, again, just to provide that flexibility for developments. If they can't, for whatever reason, provide that affordable housing, physical affordable housing, they can pay that fee, which is, again, at market rate based on HED guidelines, HUD guidelines. And the units should be comparable to market rate units. So same quality, same services available, and reasonably dispersed throughout the development so that they're not concentrated in one targeted area.
Mr. Castillo, can I ask just a brief question?
Sure.
What is, do we have, I'm not quite sure how, I understand we have a definition of affordable housing, which is something around 80%. Do we have any data on what percentage of people would qualify at that rate?
We have, so, I mean, there's census data and data that shows current income levels here in the city of Gainesville.
Yeah.
That we can look at. I didn't provide that data in our backup, but I can certainly make that available.
Well, I'm curious to know if we're doing something for 2% of the population or 40% of the population.
Sure.
And then I guess my question then becomes, if we end up saying yes to this, and I read in the backup that there's a provision, kind of what the plan board's been doing the last year or two with some of the
PDs.
larger projects, is they've offered actually on their own to set aside 10%, and we've required that they be indistinguishable basically from any of the other units. To me, that has two benefits. One is that allows them to use any unit around, so that you can't end up saying I don't have enough or something like that. But the other issue that I think is important is that they've been managed by the Gainesville Housing Authority, and so my assumption is that if we do something like the Gainesville Housing Authority or some comparable, that they at least have the option then, they supply the tenants, and then if the tenant is at 40% of AMI, there's at least the possibility that the remainder could be subsidized. So I guess what my question is there a reason why we can only do this at 80%? Could we do it at, up to 70%, something like that? That's what I'm trying to figure out.
So, based on the market, so backtrack a little bit, this would have to be doable and show some, as far as the ability for a developer to be able to.
So no, I understand, and that's what we give bonuses for, is to make that, is to compensate and also provide an incentive.
Right.
And so I'm trying to find out what can we get for that bonus that might be more than 80%. I'm not saying I insist on it, I just want to see some data. And here comes the senior advisor.
Interim senior advisor. Special advisor. Yeah, on this episode of Very Special Advisor. To Mr. Member Ackerman's comments, a couple of things, I guess. One, we can add additional density. And I think actually when the commission discussed this at general policy, Commissioner Hayes Santos had put forward a proposal which will potentially increase space densities. But we can put more density on the table in exchange for deeper affordability. What I would recommend, and this is what the data shows, is that at what a possible policy that sort of looks like that would be a mandatory requirement at 80% for 10% set aside, and then offer on an incentive basis, meaning that it's an option that we would give.
To get additional
Right, we would give
bonus
more
incentive.
density for deeper affordability.
I like that concept.
Which I think, because we can't mandate something that violates statute, you
Right.
know, but we can certainly offer that
Yeah.
as an incentive. And I think to your question about sort of the affordability gap. And
Yeah, I'm just trying to find out if we have data on that.
we do, yeah. We approximately in the Gainesville sort of metropolitan area, we have approximately about like just shy of 16,000 households that are currently cost burdened, meaning they're paying more than 30% of their income on rent and utilities. Out of that 16,000, we have shortfalls in every category, every area median income category up to about 80%. At 80%, we have roughly about 600 families on that. And then as you might imagine, as you go down that AMI list, that gap grows. And that's without taking students out of it. So even at the 80% level, we do have a gap in terms of affordable, or we have a lot of cost burden in families at that 80%. I think to your point, where we've been successful in these ad hoc ones has been working with housing authorities or other nonprofit housing entities that can also bring other resources to either deepen affordability through use of housing subsidy or vouchers. We as a city are also using some of our American Rescue Plan allocation. We have about $8 million. About $6 of it has been set aside for additional subsidy for rent and for sale, affordable housing incentives. So there are more options at play right now. We're also close to signing a contract with a community land trust that'll also be in place. So that may be another partner that we can use to sort of marry some of the things that are going on with this inclusionary zoning policy.
Any other
Sorry, one.
questions? Okay. Continue. You have more, I think.
I was just going to go over some of the things that special advisor persons mentioned, but just briefly to bring to your awareness some of the recommendations based off of the general policy meeting on October 13th from the commission, when this item came before them first, and we introduced them and talked about it. And some of the proposal was, as Andrew Persons has mentioned, to increase the density in transit zones U4 through DT, and also to provide provide additional story based on the inclusion of physical affordable housing units within the historic area or outside of the historic area transition. So, and you have a breakup right here of what that looks. Sorry, of what that looks like. So, the first 25 feet outside of the historic area transition would allow for one more story, and as you go deeper, 50 feet would allow one more story, and 50 more feet would also give further provisions. But that's something that was given by the commission, and that should be in your backup as well. And that's it. I am available for any questions that I may be able to answer.
Thanks. Go ahead. Did you have something? So I sent you an email to this effect, so you're not going to be surprised by this question, but I'm very interested in how Part C, the management agreement with the city, a community land trust, or other third-party agency. We've seen some of these drafted as a part of the PDs that have come forward, but as far as I'm aware, none of them are really like operating yet. And the groups that have done it, and I think the groups that are in the process of doing it because of the incentive they think that they can get, sort of through the PD process, we've set a little bit of a precedent there, sort of have more means available to them, perhaps legal teams that are putting together these agreements and working all of this out than maybe a smaller local developer that's building, a 12-unit apartment complex. So I think both in what we've seen come to the board in my professional life outside of this, I think what we have sort of laid the groundwork for through the PD process is working. I mean, we have, when you tell a developer, go with a PD, throw affordable housing in, and you will, can almost guarantee you'll get more density approved. That also gives them the flexibility. I think we've laid the groundwork for this as it's sort of become a little bit of an optional thing for these bigger developments, but we've seen a lot of them going in that direction, and there's more coming. I can tell you, there's more coming. I mean, the developers are very interested in this. The incentive basis is working. And we're, 5 years from now, we're going to have units online, and they also will have it'll be enough units within one complex and enough of a structured agreement to make that work. I worry about requiring this of every development, and particularly the smaller ones where they may end up with one unit that's affordable in that development, and they've got to negotiate this agreement and find a third party, and it's a lot of work, both at the front end, and I'm afraid the administration in perpetuity is a lot of work for complexes or smaller infill projects that may only have one or two affordable units. And so I'm personally not crazy about making this required right now. I really like the idea of the incentive. I can tell you that it works. I can tell you when developers come and they're talking about doing multifamily here, and you say, hey, if this, if you don't feel like you can get enough density, go this PD process, or hey, you've got this land with an existing PD, and how many units do you want? And go 50% AMI. The city commission's all about this. Developing this incentive based, I fully support, but making it required, and particularly of the smaller developments, I might be more open to maybe if we start at something with 50 units or something, but I hate the idea, and I can think of a development that we have in permitting right now on 9th Street that's a dozen units. And so it's a local person, and they would have to figure out this big agreement for one unit in their complex and pay an attorney and everything else, go talk to the housing authority. It creates a lot of work for a smaller developer, and I think I have a concern about that. So if we want it to be required, I think I'd like to increase that number of units. I think it's going to do its job with just the incentive base. I don't think we have to make it required. I see it happening. I see it. More of it's coming down the pike. I can tell you that. So I think when we're getting these big projects, the developers are used to it. They want the density, and they're willing to do the affordability. And if we can codify that, maybe it keeps them out of the PD process, which would be nice, because we, just talked about how PDs can sort of be a pain and straight zoning is better. So if we can codify exactly what that optional, incentive-based affordable housing thing is, I like giving them more for the lower AMI, but definitely letting people do the 80%. But I'm nervous about making this required at all, because we don't know how these agreements are going to play out. We haven't actually seen them in reality. They're under construction now, so I think I'm hesitant to make it required at all at this point, and particularly for smaller developments. I think if we can get these first few online that are under construction and see how that goes the first year or two, And if we have a smooth process and if the housing authority steps up and they hire 3 more people to handle all the Gainesville units coming on board, then I'll feel better about making it required. But right now, I don't think that the structure in place and the legal side of it and the administration is figured out enough that we make it required. So those are my thoughts. I'd like to see it kept optional. I think the incentive base alone will drive it. I like more bonus for lower AMI. And if nothing else, if we do vote to make it required for everything, if we like that moving forward, I think we need to increase the number from 10. It's a lot of work for one unit in your project. And I can tell you, like, I have a small project right now, so they happen. Small projects do happen.
I sort of agree in the sense that we are at an early stage and we have not yet seen how these operate. I do think that as it becomes a normal thing, I would like to think that the housing authority would have a pretty much a key punch thing that you just do, and you don't have, it's not a hard thing to do. You don't have to get a lawyer, you don't have to do all that kind of stuff. That would be the rational thing for them to do.
We just aren't there yet.
Well, I agree we're not there yet. I think we're doing unique agreements for each one of these, and I think that's a problem for a smaller developer. I don't object to making it mandatory. I also don't object to having it be voluntary as kind of a test, meaning it would be revisited to make it required in 1 year, 2 year, whatever seems like a reasonable time that would allow us to see how this operates. I do think we need to do something in order to get affordable housing moving, and it's clear that in these larger developments there is eagerness to do that, and I certainly don't want to discourage that, and I also would like to encourage the housing authorities or whoever is going to do this. I mean, I know Grace would like to do this, and they're ramping up a lot of stuff to do this because they're turning themselves into a housing agency more than they're always going to do the emergency shelter, but they're really eager to move that. But I think we need to get some good people, some good agencies that can manage this so that it's not, I mean, we want to minimize the effect on the developer, on the person that owns this, so that it's not some horrible event. I talked to a prominent developer last year who did some affordable housing in Palatka, and it drove them insane until the point that they sold it. So we want to do the opposite of that. We want to make this really easy. So I'm open to whether or not we make this mandatory or not. But if it's not mandatory, I would want it to be some date certain that we come up with, that it comes back to us and we get a report on how this is working and improvements we need to do and stuff like that. Otherwise, and I understand the problem with smaller developers and smaller, but I would like to think that at some point the housing authority just says, you got 10 units, you owe us 1 unit, here's what you need to do, we'll take care of everything else. Because that's theoretically what's happening, and the ones we've already approved is the housing authority manages those units and says, we'll place somebody in there. And I know in the case of Grace, they also say to the landlord, and if something goes wrong, we'll step in and make sure that that person is taken out and we replace with somebody else, so that again, the obligation is going to be on the managers that are not the people, the managers that have the inventory of affordable housing.
Yeah, I'd love to get to that point, but I can tell you we're not there yet. So I'm worried about making it required until we're there. Mr. Castillo?
So just to, it may help just to consider the part of the reason why we provided the fee in lieu office also to provide that flexibility for smaller multifamily developments, that they have the ability to pay a fee and mitigate for and pay into the affordable housing initiative, and that way we can use that fee to develop either more affordable housing in other areas or.
But then it makes the other units in that project more expensive. I mean, someone pays that, and it's not the developer, it's the other tenants that are coming in. So I don't like the fee in lieu, to be honest. I prefer I really think, and I think we're starting to see it, and I think there's more coming. I really think the incentive base works. I think it works. And I think, you know, I'm interested in seeing it as voluntary to start with, and a date certain, you know, of maybe 2 years, and we have a couple of these projects online and we have a year's worth of data would be really helpful. And we have a process, and housing authorities hired 3 people and Grace has 2 people, and we've got people administering this whole system that we've got going. But until there's someone that I can tell a developer, hey, call this person, they're gonna take care of it for you, like you just sign the paperwork. Until it's that easy, I have a hard time voting to make it required. It's really difficult. I mean, my firm did one of the PDs, and we're talking to other people, and it's really difficult right now. It's really difficult. But they're interested. I think the incentive base will work, but it's got to be bigger projects to start, and then once we have the system in place, you know, when we revisit it in a couple of years, maybe we look at lowering the number of units as well. Right now, I don't think we're ready for that. Go ahead.
So my first question is, our vote on this is a recommendation to the commission, correct? Okay. And like, to what extent has the city got involved with the housing authority to create some kind of mechanisms? Like, is it like a loose structure right now, or is there like a more streamlined process right now?
A bunch of one-offs.
Yeah, to date, we've had, the city has required agreements by the developer to enter into these agreements with the housing authorities. And so it's been really those one-off agreements or requirements to enter into those in order to gain ultimate approval.
So like, if this gets voted on soon, it could happen that this is approved before there's like an official structure set up with GHA. It just feels a little bit like out of order.
So we haven't, not every agreement we've done through GHA.
Got you.
We've used the Alachua County Housing Authority with the project the EDA did. We've used GHA for the other 2 projects. As I mentioned, there are a couple of different options. The city can do that. We obviously have a housing department. While it's not exactly within the housing department's current sort of wheelhouse, you know, we would make do. And then there's the Community Land Trust as well. That would be another partner at the table. I think one thing I kind of wanted to mention, ultimately, I think if and when this gets to the commission, I think our recommendation is probably to include a delayed effective date, so that some of we give projects and people a chance to get used to this, and then B, some of the it will give us a little bit of time to dial in the exact sort of administrative side of it. I think, all the comments that the board's made, I think are good comments. The HRNA analysis showed that this pencils out at 10 units, but that doesn't mean that ultimately that's where we have to draw the line at 10 units. The fee in lieu option, I will say, I also agree. I think from a staff perspective, we obviously want to see units get built more than we want to see a fee in lieu get paid. However, I will say now that I've got a little deeper dive on the housing side. We do need to figure out a way to fund housing here locally that we're not tied to Sadowski funds or necessarily, while like SHIP and home and, you know, federal and state funding is great. Those come with a lot of strings oftentimes and have to be spent in very prescribed ways. If we had a local housing fund, we would be able to do more housing. We would be able to use that fund for a variety of different affordable housing needs, be it additional like rental housing vouchers or down payment assistance or house rehab or any number of very worthy things that we currently spend money on to do here in the city. So while I agree, I think from a pure IZ policy, and I certainly felt this way very strongly when we first started working on this, that we didn't want a fee in lieu option. We just wanted on-site built units. There is some value to having this option, both for those smaller projects in terms of they don't want to go into a long-term agreement. They just want to stroke a check and move on. But also for the city in terms of building some local housing funds. So for what it's worth.
Yeah, you've mentioned the land trust a couple times. Can you talk more about what their relationship with this would look like?
Sure. So I don't know how familiar the board is with some of the background, but the city commission maybe roughly about a year ago or so has been started talking about a contract with the community land trust, or bringing a community land trust to be a partner with the city. We put out a request for proposals earlier this year. We received a response from Bright Community Land Trust, which is a land trust here in Florida that does work in a couple of different counties. They manage a pretty large portfolio of rental and for sale affordable housing in a trust, meaning, and everybody understands, everybody understands what the community land trust is here. Got it. So we, commission allocated about $1 million of our American Rescue Plan funds to support a land trust. We've been in negotiations with Bright since they were selected as the #1 ranked response for the RFP that we put out. So we're talking about bringing them on under contract to develop affordable housing in the trust model. So they will be in the community. They're actually already here. They're working with Habitat. So there'll be another option for us to potentially put some of these units that are being created. And it would be something that's a little bit closer to the city because they would be under contract with us, as opposed to the housing authorities, which are also, obviously very intimately involved with the city, but have their own boards and their own missions and whatnot. So,
Thanks.
Sure.
Yeah, I would say it sounds like there's so many moving parts. Like, I agree with it not being required right now. I'm definitely super for the flexibility with incentivizing for lower AMI. I think 80% is pretty high. So I think I'm okay with like incentive and including in the incentive the ability to go lower on the AMI.
Great. Mr. Castillo, is this your last slide? Did you have anything else? We sort of got a little sidetracked.
Yeah, I just.
Okay. Okay. Is there anyone from the public that wishes to speak to this item?
Strangely enough, yes. Harvey Ward, Gainesville City Commissioner.
Welcome.
Thank you all for your deliberation on this. It's helpful to me to listen to you all talk about it with staff. A question that has popped up in my mind before, but never an opportunity to really ask it this way, is do you have a feel, Chair Sutton, you're actually a good person to ask this of, and staff, if you know, what the percentage higher than AMI tends to be for the things that are being built and being proposed right now. So putting affordable housing aside, are we generally building at 200% AMI? Are we building at 125? I don't think it's anywhere close to even. And I really don't have a feel for what it is.
That's an interesting question. So, I will tell you, people ask us all the time at neighborhood meetings, what are these units going to cost? And the civil engineer plays dumb and says, that's not our job. I can't tell you how much it's going to cost. So I don't have a good enough sense of the market. I don't know if special advisor persons has an idea if they've done any of that. I mean, I can tell you, just construction costs alone right now, I guarantee these things are coming in. I mean, I would guess 200% AMI or higher. And they're renting them by the bedroom, which is a little bit different too. All of the student housing is rented by the bedroom,
Right.
not by the unit. And so you get a distorted rate. But I don't know, Andrew, you would probably have a better idea.
And I would volunteer, one of the problems with luxury student housing is it's a market that doesn't really track with our AMI because obviously those are income levels from another place altogether. So I've never heard that question. It's interesting.
It's interesting.
But I would say, based on what I know about the occupancy levels in the luxury student housing, there's very high demand.
Right, and I don't want to get outside the norm of your question process here, but.
I mean, I think they're paying $800 to $1,000 a bedroom.
Yeah.
And they could have 4 of them sharing a common area.
But
At that, so you're making $4,000 for one, small unit. I mean, it's got 4 bedrooms, but they're small.
We have a few downtown that are not student housing.
The new
the
Hyatt
apartments in the
ones.
Hyatt. And all, not all, I assume many of the things being built in the county out by Parker Road are not. And the relatively new development at 23rd Avenue and at the end of 23rd Avenue.
23 West.
Okay.
We did that project too.
I mean, I assume those are not student housing. And so my overall point is that 80% AMI is probably a lot lower than market.
Absolutely.
So, but it'd be interesting to try to noodle that out and see what it really is. Not so much student apartments, the 4 4s, but other apartments.
I agree. The county T&Ds are probably a good place to look for some of those numbers. So the apartments at Celebration Point, Park Avenue, 23 West, Arbor Greens has some. Those are probably all good projects to look at. I think the county projects are a good idea for that comparison's sake. I just don't know the answer. Step up. Please state your name for the record. I don't think we have a sign-in sheet. I think we stopped doing sign-in sheets.
Kali Blount, and I've been active in housing issues here for quite a long time, including currently on the board of the Alachua County Housing Authority, and I've been on both affordable housing advisory committees for city and county in the past, and some other housing-related stuff. I would urge members of this body to check out sources like the National Low Income Housing Coalition and Urban Lands Institute for research on inclusionary zoning. And I want to mention the quote of a past generation that was heard very often, if not now, when? We have a terrible problem, a terrible lack of affordable housing. We have what really amounts to 2 cities because of extreme economic segregation of housing that took the place of racial segregation when that became technically illegal. And that's one reason I don't like the in lieu of piece either, because you end up with a pile of money. And I can tell you on behalf of my housing authority or GHA, it's hard to get a site. When you get the funding together and get the plans together, it's hard to get a site where NIMBY doesn't battle you back. So with the fee in lieu of, you end up with a pile of money and still struggling for where can you establish housing. And it does not undo that economic segregation. That is the key piece, getting economically mixed housing is how you undo the separation and the terrible tale of two cities that we've got that sets you up for food deserts and even for discrimination in services. And just try riding buses around the east side. Mr. Persons mentioned that he estimates 16,000 cost-burdened households. That's not people, that's households. So you're probably talking about 30, 40,000 people. That's a big portion of our population that needs this service. And that estimate misses a lot of people who are not even paying rent directly, but are overcrowded, 2 and 3 families in a unit that should be one family. So it's really a lot more than 16,000. If you go to those sources I mentioned, you will see that 80% AMI barely scratches it. It needs to be 50% AMI. I live in the Southeast Historic Residential District where the city has tried a couple times to do some big development with the space that GRU is clearing out of. And we, of course, were real upset. We wanted to retain that green space. But the one time we were a little bit pleased, they brought in a developer who talked about 30% affordable housing, which is phenomenal. 10% is a weak response to the level of our need. You know, that's like an aspirin for a tumor. And as I said, 80% AMI just skims the top of the people who are cost burdened. And the housing authorities don't necessarily have to be involved. Your housing authorities really are best used as places to funnel in potential tenants or buyers, because our waiting lists tend to be thousands of people, and it takes years for people to go through. So, but housing authorities are quite busy managing the properties that we own and maintain. So we're not looking to take on the entire administration of affordable housing for this community, but we do want to participate. But it is something that has waited too long to happen. And, you know, if I go out and find children in poor households now, will there be ample affordable housing before their grandparents? You know, this just keeps going on and on. We'll do this later. We'll do this later. I've gotten up at so many plan board and development review meetings and asked about where's the affordable housing, and it's always, well, we haven't looked at the price point yet, and we'll look at that later. And everybody's willing to put it off and off and off. And you're looking at something that's never going to happen until you take the step.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak to this item? Okay, we'll bring it back to the board for discussion, or if we want to make a motion.
Madam Chair, I guess I would move sorry, all my senses are failing.
Can I just clarify one thing before you start? So these last couple of slides were information from the general policy meeting. Those were not a part of what was written up. Like, as far as I'm concerned, we're not discussing these two things as a part of the motion. Like, we're discussing the text amendments that we actually got staff reports for. Is that correct? And you probably needed, and we had 2 items, so do you need 2 different motions?
Yes, for the 2 different motions.
Okay. Sorry, just
concerning this wasn't part of staff's initial analysis and report. So you have the liberty to incorporate these suggestions as you will, or go with staff's initial report.
As far as the 2 add-ons, I think we probably need to see more of a comprehensive staff report and discuss those in more detail. Like, for what's on the board right now with the historic area and particularly around University Avenue, I'm open to that. But I'd like to see some like specific maps and really like dig into that a little bit more before we decide to vote on that. The density too, I think I'd like to just have more backup before we talk about those 2 items. So that's my preference. I just wanted everybody to sort of be clear, like what motions we're making and what we're potentially recommending.
Madam Chair, I think that sounds good. I think I did want to mention, I guess, like one or two things that. So at the general policy meeting, the commission discussed this issue. We brought it up. Mr. Castillo presented the language that's in front of you in the backup. This was a proposal that Commissioner Hayes Santos had put on the table. Commission talked a little bit about it, and he explained sort of where his thinking was. We haven't incorporated that into the backup language. Some of it, like this portion, would certainly be related to the additional density and land use. So we can, and we're also coming to the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee in next week, right? Tuesday to also talk to them about this. And there was also a part of the motion at general policy was to do additional outreach, or at least do additional sort of information sessions with the community led by the AHAC. So that's all to say that if you want to move some of it tonight, we can come back to you at your next meeting with a little bit more analysis on this, maybe a couple of maps, and we're happy to do so. So we want to make sure we're bringing everybody along, basically. So.
Thank you.
Actually, I was thinking right now it's a bit of a jumble.
Yeah.
And I think I would prefer that rather than make a specific motion related to this, that we give you the input on the things that we would like to see as soon as you can bring them back. And I think you've heard a lot of them, but I like the idea of either, I like the idea of having a deferred implementation date, and begin to use some of the stuff we've done, either that or so if you recommend that we make it mandatory now, that we have no, I don't think I'm going to support mandatory now. I would support voluntary with a reanalysis in whatever seems an appropriate period of time related to getting some experience on how this works. It's clear that there's some movement in the development community towards doing this. I agree with Mr. Blount that one of the issues is that the system that's gradually developed kind of organically disperses people economically, so that you end up with people rather than concentrated in a single place. They're dispersed throughout these units, and if you've got enough of these units, obviously we'd end up with a great deal of economic dispersion. And I think that's a good idea. I think the experiment 50 years ago when we built large complexes and populated them exclusively with poor people is pretty much agreed to have been a failure. So I don't think we should do that again. But I like most of what is in this, and I would like to have a little more precision on as we scale down for developers. I'm not really completely opposed to a fee in lieu, but I would like to see something fairly precise on how that would work, because what I really want is I want units that people can live in, and I don't want to have like the tree mitigation fund, which gets to be bigger and bigger and bigger every day we hear, and there's no trees, So that's the issue that I think we ought to do, and I would like to see it a little more comprehensively put together, so that if we do decide to pass something, there is actually something that people can read and know what's going to happen. Because it doesn't really feel that way right now. Anyway, that's my suggestion, and I guess if we need a motion, I would move that we bring this back, and whatever other comments that board members make, see if you can implement them or at least come up with something that makes sense. Forrest is looking at me like you alien from outer space.
No, I'm not. The opposite of that. You listed off, your points, and I actually wrote down every single one of them. So
Is your speaker on?
yes.
Okay, thank you. Some of us need
Yeah,
speakers.
I would agree. I think the implementation is the trickiest part, and I think through these first few projects, we've learned some things, and the city attorney's office has some templates, but I really think, I actually agree with Mr. Bonset. I don't think that the housing authorities are where this belongs. They have other work to do, and so we have to figure out who is going to administer this on the city side, and where does it live? Does it live in the housing department? I mean, somebody somewhere in one of these organizations is going to have to hire dedicated staff for
Well-
this program. And I don't know where that lives, and I don't know who that person is and how they interact, with the developers, but we've got to make it easy. We've got to have a system in place, like a robust system in place before we make it mandatory, or it's going to fail.
Well, the one thing the housing authorities have, as Mr. Blount said, is they have lists of
They
people.
have the tenants. And I
They-
think the person
Yeah.
at the city in the housing department would work closely
Yeah.
with them. But as far as tracking, I mean, it almost becomes a code enforcement issue, right? Like, are your units actually filled with people? Okay, here, we got these people
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, we
qualified, you
do,
checked the
yeah.
box, you filled out the city form, you're good to go. And so we need that process, because keeping track of all of this, 20 years from now, how are we tracking this? How are we handling these things in perpetuity? We don't have that system in place. And so to vote to make this mandatory now is just irresponsible. And we aren't going to be able to manage it until we have a system put together. And city staff, or a strong relationship with I think, a singular third party to handle it. I think it's got to belong somewhere to make sure that it's really implemented well and in a, and systematically. I mean, you don't want one project treated differently than another project. And, these first few are going to be one-offs, and that's okay. But I think we can put together a standard package and a standard procedure. And once we have that, it's okay to make it mandatory, but not yet. So that's my thought.
Okay.
You have enough to go on, Forrest?
Yep.
Okay.
We've got a good list.
So I think it'll also be interesting if, the next time you come back to us, bring us input from the affordable housing discussions and the community. And, I'm interested to see where that goes and sort of those other inputs coming into the conversation too.
That's certainly the intent by at least this first start of it going into the Affordable Housing Advisory Committee and from there.
We're vice versa. We're happy to share the planning board discussion tonight with the
Yeah.
AAC next week.
Great, thank you. Thank you all for working on this. I think it's going to be much more popular than the exclusionary zoning. I almost wish we had just taken this on first, but not my choice. I think there's big wins here if we can put the system together, so. Okay, do we need an official vote? Do you all feel like you have direction? Do we need to continue these officially? Okay, can we get a motion to continue from somebody?
Madam Chair, I move that we continue this to whenever the plan staff can bring it back, but as soon as you can. This is an important thing we need to get done.
I think if you can continue to November 9th, yep, they're nodding, so November 9th.
That
Okay.
sounds good.
Great, do we have a second for that?
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Okay, so we will see this with some more detail, November 9th. We're passing everything on to November 9th, it seems. Are there any other public comments this evening? Anyone that wishes to speak to anything not on the agenda? Okay, seeing none. Any member comments? So is this your last meeting, Sophia?
No.
Okay. I didn't know Sophia was leaving until tonight, so, okay, so December's her last meeting. Okay.
I have a member question.
When did we move public comment to the end of the meeting? And who did that? I don't recall doing that. And it strikes me
question.
as a bad idea because people come here and they have to sit through a whole meeting and they had a comment to make about something that's not on our agenda. So however that happened, I think it should unhappen and put it back at the beginning.
I agree. Is that a quirk of the new agenda system?
Template inside the e-scribe system.
Okay.
But
Is that
sure,
something
we
you
can
can
do that.
override?
We can, we'll connect with.
And I'm assuming we're working on reformatting our stuff so it doesn't look like this again. I'm just full of
Yeah,
complaints.
it's the new system. I'm not a fan either. I have a hard time getting the documents online and the backup. I don't know. Maybe there's like a workaround. Maybe we can do a little like lunch and learn on how to use this new system because I don't know if I just don't know or I'm just unfamiliar or it just doesn't do everything I want it to. I'm not sure which of the three.
We've all struggled to find our backup.
Yeah.
And the link you sent me the other day, Juan, it wants a password that it will not accept.
I had the same thing. I wanted a password.
And I don't know what password it wants, but whatever password it wanted, I didn't have.
Yep.
And the other
there's
problem,
something quirky with this.
And then the other problem is, and I finally figured it out, is I guess the website is moved from cityofgainesville.org to cityofgainesville.gov.
Yes.
And you can find most of the stuff once it gets there, but everything seems to go to cityofgainesville.org, and there is actually still a website there.
Yeah.
Now, I've had it occasionally forward to Gov, but a lot of times it doesn't. I'm unhappy, Mr. Commissioner.
We need some
And
tech
Mr.
support.
Senior Advisor.
Special.
We need a project style how-to guide for the e-scribe system.
We have a host of resources and people that we can have them reach out directly to you or whatever you think works the best.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if we're having issues, like, can only imagine the public.
Yeah, like I'm having a hard time, and we talked about this, I don't know if it was last month or the month before, but even getting like the blank agenda, like just the template agenda before you have the backup in there, being able to do that, because we used to be able to do that, and I guess that's an issue with the new system too. But I think that's really helpful for people. I mean, we have members of the public that are interested in what we're going to be talking about, and if you don't know when the agenda is going to be posted, I'd like to have it up there a couple weeks in advance, even if it doesn't have all the backup yet. I think that's helpful.
One thing that happens with that, I mean, I agree with you, and I'm, of course, hung up on the old agendas and old agenda system too, since a lot of them I put together. But one of the things that happens with eScribe for those items, if we did load it onto the agenda and then go and add backup to it, it reorders things, which is, we can overcome that. That's just, a weird quirk, but there are things like that happen. Like when we actually go and add files to things, it totally shifts.
Well, I've noticed when I download the stuff, it downloads on mine with no name. It's called file something. And then I have to go in and figure out what it is and rename it, which is a bit of a pain in the butt.
Yeah, I think it's a learning curve thing, so if there is support,
Yeah,
maybe
we
like a
have
lunch and
some
learn or
backup
something, and
documents.
maybe even just via Zoom would be fine.
Yeah,
That would be really helpful.
we can do that.
How to for the new city website and eScribe system. Great. Any other member comments or complaints this evening? Okay, so we will see each other in just a couple weeks, November 9th. And then did we ever confirm the second meeting in December? Do we just have the December 8th meeting?
You're referring to the joint.
To the meeting with the commission, which I'm not sure makes a lot of sense since it's going to be a new commission in January. But
Yeah, as of this moment, we don't have a confirmation for that joint meeting. December 8th is our city plan board
regular
meeting.
meeting. Okay. And was that one's a Wednesday, if I remember right? Okay. All right. So, the other meeting you're still potentially working on or will potentially move to January with new commissioners?
So just to correct, that's actually a Thursday, December 8th.
Oh, okay, it is a Thursday. Perfect. Oh, maybe it's the 9th that's a Wednesday. One of them was.
Yeah, November is a Wednesday.
Okay, perfect. With that, we will adjourn the meeting this evening. Thank you all. you.